for joining us on this cold but now clear evening. We're very pleased to have you here at the Orchard Lake Schools and the Polish Institute of Culture and Research in our Galleria. We have a new exhibit that we're premiering next week, which is based on Polish biography and how Polish Americans have remembered important figures both locally and nationally and internationally, and through our art collection and through some of the historical artifacts that we have. Also next week, we are having Christoph Meisinger here for a concert. All the information is on our website, so there's flyers in the back as well. So please do join us for that as well. But tonight we are hosting Ewa Barczyk, Dr. Ewa Barczyk, who is here to talk about her book, Footprints of Polonia. And I mentioned too that she has copies of the book available for sale afterwards. So if you are interested, it's a very interesting book. It is different sites all across America that are connected to Poland, Polonia, or Polish Americans. That includes monuments, but also buildings and sites, including, among others, Orchard Lake. So there's an entry on that as well, and she'll talk about that. And Dr. Barczyk is Emeritus Associate Provost and Director of Libraries at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She had her MA in Slavic Studies from University of Kansas, and her MLIS from Southern Connecticut State University. She grew up in Chicago and has a long and distinguished academic career, very involved with the Polish American Historical Association. She's on the board of PAHA and also president of the Polish Librarian Society. So, Professor Barczyk, thank you for coming and welcome.
And before I start, I do want to recognize that we have the Honorary Consul Valvender here. Mr. Valvender is here. Also, would like to, it's an honor to have our delegation from Warsaw. Bardzo wielki zaszczyt, że Państwo są z nami. And yes, this will be in English, my presentation. And I just want to start my thing so I don't go over time or under time or whatever we have here. Thank you for inviting me. This is actually my first time, and my husband is here with me, our first time here in Orchard Lake, and we got a wonderful tour this afternoon or this morning, and I was blown away by what I saw today, and I'm sure it was the tip of the iceberg. What a treasure, what treasures there are here. And yes, I did. Ewa sent me an entry for it from my book, but that doesn't do justice to what is here. So thank you for this opportunity. So what I'm going to do is tell you about the book, kind of what is in there, what I chose not to include here, why, and talk. Then we'll go on a little field trip. You know, you don't have to put your seatbelts on. We'll drive around the United States and Canada and down to Central America to look at some of these sites so you get a feel of the different generations and what they contributed. And then some of the, challenges and some of the observations that I had. As the title page here says, it's a project of the Polish American Historical Association, which we call PAHA, so if you allow me to use the term PAHA, which is an organization I think many of you are familiar with, which was founded in 1942 to promote Polish culture, history of the Polish diaspora. And the board realized that 35 years ago there was a small book that did some of the historical sites in North America and Canada. It was pretty small, black and white, and we know that Polish communities have changed, they've evolved, they've dispersed, they've created new things. So it was felt that as historians, it behooves the organization to take a look and see what is the state of Polish monuments and Polish, I call them the footprints, because everywhere Poles went, they left their traces. And I raised my hand, or maybe my hand was raised for me, and I took on this project. I thought, oh, how difficult could this be? My husband kept saying, are you sure? But it turned out to be a wonderful COVID project. Doing a travel guidebook during COVID was quite the challenge. So, as I mentioned, anywhere you go, wherever there are Poles, and you find them everywhere. And the size of the circles indicate the density of Polish population. I think we know, saying things that you all probably know, there's probably close to 10 million, 9.5 million people of Polish American heritage in the US, about 1 million in Canada, and yes, that is Canada, independent Canada there, which also has about the same proportion of Polish Canadians as we do in the United States. Of course, their population is different. I'm not going to go into talking about the different immigration waves here, because I think, I'm looking around, I think you are all familiar with this, but I raise this because the different generations left different traces, so their focus was different, and we see this in the book. Their focus was different, the heroes that they wanted to honor were different, and as they become more affluent and more assimilated, it changes. So the book includes all of this and more. I mean, obviously churches, not surprisingly, predominantly, there are several other churches highlighted in the book, statues and monuments. There was extensive collections of archives or art collections. I included them, not just a few paintings in the Chicago Art Institute by Polish artists. That would not have made it. But major Polish museums, bridges built by Polish architects, relics, and then so you say, what's not in here? We had to limit it because the publisher gave us a page limit, plus you wanted this to be able to be picked up in one volume. And when I started collecting things, I realized if I was all-inclusive, this would be a multi-volume encyclopedia. So commercial entities, because they do change, their focus is not the cultural aspects. Organizations, with the exception if an organization has a building, a physical building which is accessible, like Shijiba, like the PNA or the PRCU in Chicago, and there's other organizations like that. If it's closed, there's no traces of Polishness left, they've been transformed. And I didn't include streets, parks, because there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of streets named, particularly after Pułaski and Kościuszko. And what else could I say? Oh, another street, right? So the focus is on the built environment. In other words, what we human beings created, not nature. I still recall when John was in Alaska, I contacted you and said, what's up here? What's up? What Polish things are there in Alaska? John's answer was, just me. Well, sorry, you can't put that in. But he did tell me there were fjords and mountains and things that were named after Kościuszko and others. But that's not the kind of things I included. And actually, there's quite a bit. But so those are the things that aren't there. So one of the first things, then there was a committee, advisory committee that I worked with, and what is Polonia? How do we define this? As we all know, Poland, was multi-ethnic and multi-religious, and how do we encompass all that? And so we decided that the best approach was to do a mono-ethnic, just Poles, what the way Polish communities were created, basically speaking Polish, Catholic, and Also noticed that many of the other groupings had their own organizations, and they kind of lived apart and stuff. So that's how we defined it. One can argue whether that's the right way or not, but again, we had to have a definition of what we were including in this book. To give you an idea of what the book looks like, I did put I did say this all started, by the time I got started on this, COVID came, so travel was out of the question. And rather than suspend the project, I reached out to Polish organizations, Polish individuals that I knew around the country, put articles in the Polish American Journal, Polish American Studies, asking for volunteers. And I had quite the response of several hundred people who came forward, and about 200 contributed. And there are several of you, raise your hand, those of you who contributed. Yeah, that's Sister also, Shostra. You all, contributed to this. So I had to give the individuals who are contributing guidelines of what I expect and create forms. So I have about 200 words when I figured out how many entries I might accommodate. And then asking for their pictures that they would take their own so that we did not have copyright issues or royalty fees or anything. And then I arranged it by country. So Canada, United States, Central America, or Mexico, then within that states, provinces, and I kept, just going down to, the cities and the sites. So it is all alphabetical, extensive index, so it's easy to go back. Many cross-references, so if you're looking up something and there's an artist mentioned, you'll get cross-references to other churches or other sites that this individual was also involved in. And I forgot to mention, also little ribbons or sidebars, like if things didn't quite fit into a site or they were bigger than that, I would put a sidebar. So in Milwaukee, my husband and I live in Milwaukee now for the last, 40 years or whatever. He did a little sidebar on Polish bowling alleys. Because those were multiple rather than just one. In northern Wisconsin, there's a trail, a hiking, biking trail that you can go across from Polish settlements, and they have Polish shrines along the way, churches, and it's all online. And so, that's the kind of things I would add to an area to enhance it. And I mentioned churches, lots of churches. Not surprising, we all know the first thing when Polish settlers came to the United States, they had no money, but somehow they managed to gather enough money to build churches. And these were magnificent buildings, as you have many of them in the Detroit area. Colloquially, they're called Polish cathedral style, with the twin spires, the big domes, and mainly found in the Midwest and East Coast, kind of where the earlier settlers, and also the churches were not only a place of worship, but they're usually the priest, the pastor was the one who had the education, the connections, and was able to get the wherewithal to build these churches. And then these became the schools for their children to continue their Polish. Also, Polish societies were connected with it. So it was really the heart of the community. So these were very important, and I felt that we need to do justice to these churches and include them. And as I found, many of them were named St. Stanislaus or Our Lady of Częstochowa. That seemed to be the most common of the churches. But they're not all the same. And if you leave the Midwest, you start seeing different types of structure. So there's Panna Maria, Texas, which is considered the oldest, the first Polish church in the United States. And they're very contemporary, Our Lady of Częstochowa in Middleton. What I wanted to highlight, and bear with me because it's in my hometown, Milwaukee, and I think it's amazing. It's the Basilica of St. Josaphat. And aside from the fact that it's modeled after the Vatican, St. Peter's in Rome, and it's humongous, but walking in, you get a veritable history lesson. You can go see Kościuszko and Skarga and the Polish apparitions and the saints. So you walk around and it's just living history for the people, but also the story of it. Was this in an area of Milwaukee in the late 1890s, 1900s, mainly Kashubians in this region, very poor, worked in the tanneries. They had no money, but they outgrew the first church, they wanted a grand church. The priest, the pastor, heard that there was a U.S. post office, custom house being torn down in Chicago, which is 90 miles away. He arranged for all of that to be shipped by trains to Milwaukee, and then the people working after work would go unload it and carry it to the site. And the women would be there in the evenings when they were digging, taking the dirt out in their aprons. And to this day, when you walk up to the doors and I'm thinking from Polish to English, doorknobs, they're like this big, and it says U.S. Post Office and Customs House. You can still see that. So, this is an example of Polish ingenuity, Polish dedication, their belief, and their strong faith and community. And to this day, the church, even though the community has changed as many Polish communities have, it's still maintained. And there's Polish priests there, and people come back to the church and support it. And it's recently been renovated, and it's amazing. So if you're ever in Milwaukee, stop there. Now, wouldn't be surprising to you if I said probably biggest number of statues that were built were Kościuszko and Pułaski. There was a whole trend around the turn of the century. We call it the big horse era. And by that time, beginning of the 1901 or whatever, Poles have been here now long enough to have established themselves, and they feel they want to build these statues of these Poles who were active in the United States. It was a way of tying them back to their Polish heritage, but also showing the Americans that, look, we've made it, look, we have these heroes that helped you, and we espouse these same values. So it was a link of showing that they've, are Polish and American. And on just a little side note, these are the kind of things that I'll tell you, in the book tells you, it'll tell you how big this statue is, which the one on the right, that's in Washington, D.C., who sculpted it, what Polish organizations supported it, and any other information about it. But also little tidbits about it, such as on your left over there, the double one. So that is Kościuszko and Pułaski together in Poland, Ohio. And the historians in here will say, "But wait, Eva, Kościuszko and Pułaski were never together," which is true. The other ones are older, but that is a relatively contemporary, 20th century. So the artist was still alive, so I contacted him and said, "Could you explain this, anomaly?" He said, "Oh, no, I know it wasn't, they were never together, but when I was working with the Polish committee, we couldn't decide who we wanted, and so I did both." So anyway, those are those little, factoids that are included in the book to make it a little more than, your average description of a statue. Okay, come on. Okay. So those were the early settlers. They really focused on the Polish-American heroes and big statues to show that they've made it in this country. And as, time progresses, after World War I, there are many, many memorials built to Polish Americans who served in the Army and the Navy and all branches of the United States armed forces. The middle one is a statue in one of the Polish cemeteries outside of Chicago. And also, you probably recognize King Jagiełło. I don't know if you've seen him in Central Park, New York. He's one of numerous objects that were part of the Polish pavilion in the 1931 World's Fair in New York. We all know what happened. Yes, did I get it? 1939. What did I say? Oh, whatever. 1939. So we know what happened in 1939. So none of these items were sent back to Poland, and they were kept in the United States, and then Polonia, it was dispersed throughout the country. I'll show you some others that are in Chicago. Some are now going back. But this one was installed in Central Park, and it's quite magnificent. Also, the little picture, the one that looks like Wyspiański, the stained glass, that's in the UN. Another, there are a number of Polish examples of Polish art and artistry in the UN when you visit there. As the newer generations come in, they start putting up monuments to the more contemporary Polish heroes and saints. And are going back and looking at Polish Americans who were not recognized before because they were war heroes. Popiełuszko, there was quite a few statues, monuments throughout the country to Popiełuszko. The lovely face that you see here, that's Paula Negri, who was a silent femme fatale. And she has a beautiful statue on a bench in Los Angeles at a Polish church. And that is, yes, that's John Paul II looking down at her. So it's an interesting juxtaposition there. Not contemporaries, but in the book, and if you're reading about this church in Los Angeles with this statue, I also tell you about Paula Negri, the fact that the house that Rudolph Valentino built for her, where she's buried, that some of her papers are in San Antonio. There's actually a shrine to Our Lady of Częstochowa in San Antonio where she frequented Mass. And on the altar, I'm told to this day, there's a statue of Our Lady of Częstochowa and a picture of Paula Negri. So again, filling in and being able to follow and getting to know more than just there's a statue here. There's also, see also, list, go there. And I also give URLs, to follow up with more information because it was limited. The column on the bottom is an example of where very relatively recent kind of developments where Polish art memorials and statues are appearing in the in the U.S. mainstream realm. Now that's right in the heart of Denver. It's a monument to 6 different Polish heroes like Paderewski and Curie, Kościuszko-Połaski. They're all on the statue. But they're no longer just in the Polish neighborhood. They're now out for everyone to see. And more examples of very contemporary type of art that now Polish American artists are being accepted. And I don't know if you probably are familiar with Andrzej Pytyński. Those are his sculptures in the Commons in Boston, and it's a memorial to the forgotten soldiers. Is that the term?
Cursed soldiers.
Cursed soldiers. Okay. And he also has monuments. The Avengers, one of his most famous one. In Doylestown. There's also in Washington, D.C., New York, you find his work in the public arena. And, quite accepted. The same way with Abakanowicz. The torsos in Chicago, we have her birds in Milwaukee, she has something in New Jersey. So beginning to see more and more of Polish-American art in the public arena. And the little bench, I think, is pretty touching. This was 2008, and this is in Eastern Connecticut. A small Polish community, but they recognized that there were so many Polish workers in the textile factories, and they were never recognized. So putting up little memorials like that, and going back to memorialize, Polish workers who had lived here. On the right, that's another Popiełuszko monument in Connecticut. This I'm just showing you as a contrasting way of the way Polish artists conceptualize Kopernik. One is Syracuse, the other one is in downtown Philadelphia. And, just different approaches, different styles. But again, right in the public area. The sgraffito on the left is right on a university wall on the outside, so very visible. The stained glass window is yet another example of, like Jagiełło, the things from 1939 were not returned to Poland. And this is a magnificent, I think, 6-story stained glass window at the Polish Museum in Chicago. And if you've been there, you can't miss it. And also another thing that has been appearing and spreading is memorials for cotton. And this one happens to be in Chicago, but they are, I have found them in Seattle, on the East Coast, in many locations.
In Oslo Lake too.
Pardon me?
In Oslo Lake too.
Yeah, we have a cocktail also.
Okay, all right. Didn't know that. See, I learn something every day. On the right, this is Wayne State's Polish Room. It got a little cut here, but included that since it's in your neighborhood here. And these are the picture of the two eagles. The one on the left has a crown on it, so it's a Polish eagle and American eagle. That is just went up last year in a public park in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. It's called For Our Memory and Yours.
Our freedom?
Our freedom and your freedom. Our freedom and yours. And, so it continues to, there are new things, new developments, new statues that are coming up. Unfortunately the book is now obsolete because since it's been published, I keep discovering new things, both things that are still being built and are established, as well as things that I didn't know about, I'm learning. But I have a statue here of John Paul II because I actually didn't count, but I think he has more than Kościuszko and Pułaski because he is everywhere. But it's hard to distinguish which of the statues are built by Polish community and which ones are because he was on a pilgrimage. Like there's a marvelous one in Mexico City. The Mexicans donated 7 million keys to build the statue. But it was not the Polish community, but it's the Mexican community. So he's everywhere. As John said, yes, we do include the center here. And because, as I said, it was during COVID, so I relied on volunteers. And Sister Genevieve submitted a write-up of the center for the book in Polish. So I had to do a translation and chose pictures. I have many of them, which I was unable to use all of these, but this is some examples of the things that are in the book to recognize the importance of this center. And it really is the people involved with the organization that made those choices rather than me saying, oh, I think this is what I think is important. I relied on those involved and those working in the community to be the guides of this. So you have different voices in this book, but that's, I think, is one of its strengths, that it's not just an editorial person making these decisions. Oops, okay. And of course, I'm throwing these in because I'm here. I'm in Detroit for the first time, but in Hamtramck and hope to I'm planning on getting there this weekend and do some sightseeing. But this, Karen Majewski submitted things to us. And some more of, I think, John, you found that Mikołaj Kopechnik on your way to work one morning. He was so excited, he calls me, guess what I just discovered on my way here. So this area is well included in the book, including the churches, and I know things change and evolve. Unfortunately, some of the churches that I've included are no longer open. And another area that the community in Grand Rapids was very actively involved, and a number of individuals submitting information, sending me pictures, and they're very excited to be included in this book. Now, that was, we were focused on the U.S. I do want to include a little bit because Canada is also well represented, probably not as well as the United States because I didn't have as many volunteers there, but I'll just kind of run through here to get a sense of what is up in Canada. They have similar immigration patterns, like we talk about 3 or 4. They say they had 5. And this is a pretty recent monument to recognize the different phases of Polish immigrants. And there were many Poles who settled in Canada after World War II. So thereby, it's not surprising that they have monuments to Monte Cassino. And then I did Canada, and I was so excited to find that Central America really is North America too, and so I started going south and exploring there, and was very surprised to find as many things as I did. And I've all heard of Santa Rosa in Mexico, which housed about 1,500 Poles during the war, the ones who came from Siberia, through Iran, India, and they were taken in by the Mexican government, and the school was set up. And while I was researching this, there's a big plaque there that talks about the settlement, I was able to uncover a Polish filmmaker who lived in Mexico City, and he was making documentaries of Santa Rosa and the inhabitants. And what I learned is that those who had lived there, survivors, would come back for an anniversary. And so he sent me the link of one of these, and much to my surprise, I discovered that I knew people from Chicago. They're my parents' friends, so I was able to talk to them to hear more about the story of living in Santa Rosa. Another area that I didn't know much about was that in Haiti, Napoleon sent a Polish delegation to put down the rebellion, and the Poles said, wait a minute, we're really on their side. I mean, we don't want to put down they want freedom, we're fighting for freedom. So they abandoned Napoleon and joined the rebels and stayed on. And there's a town, especially Casales, that is, you have Haitians with blue eyes, lighter hair, and there's a Polish school there. If you go on YouTube, take a look, you can hear them singing Polish hymns, and there's a grotto with Our Lady of Częstochowa there. This plaque, which is in English, Polish, French, Haitian, was dedicated in 2018 after there was massacre by the dictator of the killings that these inhabitants suffered greatly because they weren't black enough for his regime. And so this was a memorial that was put up to recognize that horrid event. Went down to some of the other countries in Central America, and I mean, yes, I could find Pope John Paul statue everywhere because he traveled extensively. But also, Chopin there were Polish communities, and I was able to find that the small Polish communities would gather by these statues to commemorate May 3rd, and so they were focal points for them. And in Mexico City, The statue of Paderewski has a little interesting story as well, because it was done right after the war, 1945, but it didn't go up for 60 years. The Polish government did not want Paderewski to be honored, the Polish communist government. So it was kind of in hiding for a long time until now it's on a beautiful central avenue, so it has quite the place of honor. In case you think that this book is nothing but serious, churches and everything else, it has a little fun thing. So that's, a statue of Stanley Ketchel, the wrestler. Boxer. Yeah, that's why Neil comes along. He's the historian. You did the entry for this, in Grand Rapids. And then I was just hearing from somebody about Posen today, and as it happens, it is in the book. And then one of the volunteers insisted that I include legs, which, that was a debate because it's a kind of a commercial site, but it's got all this artwork and stuff, so it was like, okay, fine, it went in there as well. And there's a little more around Michigan, and that's the one on the right, that's Parisville, which I leave it to the readers to decide that whole dilemma. Is Parisville, the church, was that older than Panna Maria or not? But, Panna Maria is the accepted, oldest, first Catholic church. But I did include the story of Parisville as well, and what's left of it there. So, so this book is not done, because, as I said, I keep finding new things. This is not in the book, because the dedication to Hala's army, the tombs that were dedicated here, not far from here, happened after the book had come out. But, so today, this afternoon, we went out and I trudged through the snow to take some pictures, because we do have plans for kind of, not necessarily another print book. It is available also as an ebook, but we really are thinking that it needs to be an online book, an interactive book, where it has an app. You can go up to places and read about them. I said most entries are about 200 words, but some of the information I got from volunteers was 2,000 words, which I had to cut down. But that, if we're online, it doesn't matter, because you could include this. And I have multiple pictures from each site. I had to choose at most one for each entry. So all of that would be solved by having it online. And I'm actually in discussions with the professor in Poland right now about getting some Polish government funding and getting young people, because it's not something I would attempt to do, as witnessed by trying to get this to work on here today. So, but one of the things that PAHA may be there, I'm not sure, I didn't check today. There's supposed to be a button on the PAHA website where you go through my book and you go, well, I didn't include this, why not that? It's not because I didn't like it, but it's because I didn't have room or I didn't know about it. So we're asking the community, the Polish community, to continue to send in information. I mean, this morning I woke up with several emails because I did a presentation online on Saturday. And from there, several people sent me some things that are newer things in their community, or I didn't know about. So I try to keep up with that and collect it, create and have a database going of that. So overall, some of the things I could kind of pull out of doing this project. That very happy to report that by and large, the Polish footprints, the statues, the monuments, are actually in pretty good shape. Community groups have undertaken restorations. For example, in Milwaukee, my Polish Women's Cultural Group raised funds. We restored the Kościuszko statue because decades ago somebody thought it was a good idea that the horse's legs were beginning to rust. Let's pour some cement in that. Not a good idea. So we had him dismounted and shipped him off to Indiana and restored. And I found that in other communities as well. I mean, for example, in New York, I got a panic call from a lady who said, you know, that thing in your book, the World War I participants on the big marble and brass thing, it disappeared. Sure. Well, looking through, I got a hold of the head of the Kosciuszko Foundation, because I knew he has connections with the consulate. Well, yes, it did. The part was sold, and that giant, I mean, it was probably the size of, you know, this wall here. The Polish consulate has taken it and has moved it. They're restoring it, and it's going to go to Doylestown, and among with all the other artifacts that are there. But that's the kind of things that are happening as they are being saved. They're not being, unfortunately, as we know, churches are being merged and they're closing down, and the wrecking ball has hit some of the churches that are in the book as well, in spite of efforts by Polonia to save them. So that's the churches, the veterans' homes, because there are no veterans left. Those are the things. Some of the Polish community houses. Those are the things that are closing down. But I didn't finish this with a sense of despair that things are disappearing, because actually the pace at which new things are coming up was surprising to me. Even though the old Polish neighborhoods have now dispersed, they've changed, they've been redone, remodernized, but they're still being retained, but new things. There is just an effort to recognize where Poles have lived, that have contributed. So there's just numerous plaques and smaller busts going up around the country. I mean, one of the states that I didn't have anything from was Alaska, and learned that, was it last year, there's now a plaque to Ralph Modjeski. And so there are new things throughout the country that are being added to recognize Polonia's contributions. And so, in terms of the book itself, it has multiple uses. I mean, it could be a travel guide, which is why we want the interactive, because then you won't have to travel with a big paper thing. But I do have a bibliography for the reading, URLs, and in terms of your local communities, finding out what is there, and as you're traveling. And I've had a lot of Polish genealogy group contact me. They find that this is a useful source, and also that during my webinar on Saturday, that this book is being assigned to at Northwestern. One of the professors is using it as one of the books that the students are using in studying Polish American history. Also for Polish schools, in particular Polish Saturday schools. And I've gone in and talked with students, usually it's the high school Polish students. They make me do it in Polish though. So anyway, the students are amazed because they don't know that it's their, and some of them are second generation, third generation. They don't know that what their grandparents, great-grandparents, really, they built that? That's a Polish site? They don't know this. So instilling that pride of Polonia and informing them. And also, we had hoped, PAHA had hoped that through this book we could kind of encourage Polish organizations to look around and kind of do an inventory in their community and see what needs restoration, what needs some care. What is not represented here? Are there others that had not been included here? And also, when I've had non-Poles look at, flip through this, they're absolutely blown away that these were all Polish contributions over this, I guess, decades. So. I just wanted to now kind of conclude with some of PAHA, just to talk about, because when I'm, pushing the sale of this book, I just will make it just let you know, I get nothing from the sale of this book. this and the talks that I'm giving, it's for PAHA, for the organization. Any of the royalties from this come to PAHA, and we, as an organization, I mean, the URL here, the QR code that's here, we are raising funds to we bring young scholars over from Poland to our conferences to give them an opportunity to present. It's very expensive for them. So that's one of the goals, right, that we've been doing, is to have more money available to bring more Polish scholars here. Some of the things that PAHA has done is publish an amazing Polish-American encyclopedia. Ohio University Press, Professor Barczyk is right here, who's been the godfather, I wanted to say grandfather, but the godfather, of steering this and the publication of the series. We have a memoirs project going of post-World War II, and that the materials are held at, because our repository for PAHA is Central Connecticut State University. And, so we're collecting memoirs. I encourage you to go to the PAHA website and read some of the objects that speak. Things that, and also consider contributing. I did one, I have a kufet, a steamer, that I came with my parents from England, and that held everything that my parents owned. And, that kind of, to me was the symbol of what we came with. And the Polish connections and all of that. But people have submitted things. There's something that was written that Anya wrote from here.
From our collection.
Yeah. And people write about the christening gowns at home or some painting. They're very short entries. They're very interesting. I encourage you to take a look and consider contributing. Also, PAHA publishes the Polish American Studies Journal. Recently has started a new initiative of publishing the PAHA Books Project, books on Polish topics that it's very difficult to get them published with a commercial publisher these days. And that's the website for PAHA. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.